Okay, I've loaded up my simple bot October 4th, 2018 file, and it's this one here. It's important to know that when you expand it or unzip it, that it's unzipped to the root level. Double click on it, and so this project name has the same name as the directory name. You can either launch it from here or from the Epic Launcher, or in Labs and Clash you would go to the actual editor. So this is an Unreal 4.19 project. If you go to the home page, and if you come down to SimpleBot files, this is the file that I'm starting with. Okay, so let's jump in. So got this open, the sources panel. I've made animations and character folders. Materials are in here. If you need to change the color of a material, we'll go over that in class. Okay, so under project settings, so we have under input here, we have our bindings already set. We don't have any action mappings yet, but we do have axis mappings. Now, since I use the mouse with my left hand, it's not as convenient to use W, S, A, and D for me, so I'm going to go ahead and add another, so I'm going to go to the keyboard, and I'm going to do the up arrow, and let's go to the keyboard and add the down arrow. So W is going to be the same as up, and S is going to be the same as down. So I'll change my scale to -1. And then I'm going to do that for also move right with the right and left arrow keys. Okay, so all my keyboard commands are added. And I'm also going to add action mapping. Okay, and so this one is going to be jump. Give that a name. And the keyboard is going to be the spacebar. Okay, so you don't have to save these. You can just exit out and it'll all stay in there. And that's under input. Right, now the next thing I'm going to do is go under animations, and I'm going to right click. Let's go to animation, and we're going to make a 1D blend space. You have to choose a skeleton. Let's give it a name. SB for SimpleBot. Blend space. Let's call it for locomotion, BS for blend space. Double click on that, and it brings up our SimpleBot here. I'm going to just take this window and just push the tab over there. So I'm going to want to take the bot idle, and I'm going to put it here at 0. I'm going to take the bot walk and put it here at about roughly 25%. And I'm going to take the bot run, put it up here at 100% of the graph. Over here, if we open up the horizontal axis, we'll want to give this a name. So this is the We'll call it the BS for blend space speed. And the minimum and maximum values are now set at 100. Probably want to, and I can give you the number of divisions on the grid. Okay, so this is bot walk, so I'm just going to move this over to there, and I'm going to keep that one on 100. The only reason I'm doing that is it gives me more places to put these. So I think I might want this at just a little bit more than 25%, so to do that I probably need to put it at 9 or maybe even 7. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, so importantly, you have to save. Now I'm going to go down here and back to my animations directory, right click again, animation, and let's make an animation blueprint. Okay, so it's asking me for the skeleton to use in the blueprint, so SimpleBot skeleton, click OK. And let's call this SB for SimpleBot underscore anim underscore BP for blueprint. Okay, so locomotion blend space, anim blueprint. Double click here, and I get immediately dropped into the anim graph. If you don't see that, if you see the event graph, then just click on the anim graph. If the anim graph weren't there, you could just come down here and double click, and that'll bring it up. First thing we'll do here is right click, and let's type in the search field for state. If you have context sensitive on, then if you're dragging off a node or something, it's going to limit your selections based on what you can do with a particular node. If you take this off, it's going to give you a whole lot more choices, so it's probably best to keep context sensitive on. So we're going to add a new state machine, right? And here we can call this SimpleBot underscore SM for state machine, and then we just plug it in here. Okay, now the thing with state machines, if you hover over them, you can see that you can dig down deeper inside. So we'll dig down. Okay, so here's our entry point for the state machine. So let's drag off that, and we're going to add a state. And let's call this state locomotion. Right click on the mouse button to drag, left click to select, click outside to deselect, and with the wheel button you can zoom in and out. Okay, so locomotion is our first state. So now let's double click on that. And again, we have this final animation pose. So what we're going to do here is I've got the asset browser here, which is good. So I'm going to want to play the blend space here for locomotion. So we can just take this and drop it in, and it makes a blend space player node. Okay, so I'll just collect that, or connect that. Okay, and it's put in that blend space speed float axis. Okay, what you want to do is take this and you want to right click and promote it to a variable. Okay, and so then up here you can name that variable, and let's just call it speed. And I'm going to do an underscore type AB. And that's just so I know that this is a variable made in the AnimBluePrint. Because sometimes it might be easy to kind of get these variables mixed up. Okay? So now I'm going to come back. And we can just come back up here to go up a level. Now what I'm going to do is add the first state in my state machine. So again, the theory of state machines, that video series goes over it in great detail, probably more detail than you want, but I'm just going to cut to the chase. So I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to add another state, and I'll call this jump. Actually, we'll call it jump start. Let's click and drag again, and another state. Let's call this jump idle. And a third state, add state, and we will call this jump end. Then what we will do is just link that back up to animation. Okay, so the whole idea here is that while the character is locomoting, they can go to another state which plays the jump animation. Then once that animation is done, then you can go into the jump idle. Depending on how far or how high you are or how much you are in the air is going to determine how long you'll be in this state. Then you can go to jump in, which will just play the animation once, and then you can move back to locomotion. So this sets up the logic of how your animations will flow in and out of one another. Okay, so now that I have my state set up, populated them, whoops. So I need to go in here for jump start and add that. Connect those two. Okay, so now let's set up our jump idle. And so what we're going to do there is find the jump loop. Dropped it in here. Click on that. Okay, so then we'll come back. And then we'll click on jump end. And so let's get the jump end. Click that in here. And we'll come out. I've got all my animations to play for these states, and now what I have to do is set up the conditions for getting into the state. Okay, so with documentation, if you hover over it, you can hit Control and Alt, and this will give you a good idea about how to set these transitions up. And so under transition rules, there's a lot of good information there. Okay. So how this works is the character can enter a jump mode, and this is a Boolean value. So let's promote that to a variable, and variable name, we'll make that is in air, question mark. So if the character's in air, and Unreal has ways of knowing that, we can hook up later. If the character's in the air, then you can enter the transition. Or you can enter that animation rather. Okay. For this one here, what we want to do is make sure that this animation is done playing or nearly done before we get to the idle. Okay, so let's click in there. So what we're going to do here is find the the remaining time of the previous animation. So let's right click and let's type remain. Okay, so here we've got time remaining ratio of jump start. Okay, so what we want to say is if this is if this animation has played nearly 100%, we can go into the idle transition. So what we will do there is add a math node with a greater than. Or actually, we're going to use a less than. Okay, so come out here. So we'll use the less than. Okay, so float is less than float. Okay, so this is a float variable. Okay, so if this is less than 0.1 or in other words, if 90% of the animation's played, then you can enter the transition. Okay. And again, so we're playing the jump idle or the loop, and we're going to keep playing it until the character's no longer in the air. So double click in here, and so here we can take that is in the air variable. So we want to get if it's in the air, we can set or get information from this, and we want to see if it's not in the air. Okay, so we're going to come out here and let's just type not. So not Boolean. So if it's not in the air, then you can enter the jump end or jump land. Okay. And let's double click here, and it's going to be the same thing about the ratio. Okay, so let's get time remain, and that's going to be the jump end. Let's make sure I got the right one there. Do that again. Time remain. Yeah, so I want the ratio. Okay, yeah, so I had chosen the wrong node. Okay, so again, we'll come out here and do the less than again, 0.1. So if the time remaining is less than 0.1 or less than 10% remaining, you can enter the transition. I honestly think setting up this AnimBluePrint and getting the right nodes is one of the more difficult aspects of this. These nodes have changed since the that first-person tutorial on YouTube that I pointed you to, but it's not the exact same node name, but you're still looking for the same function. So that tutorial says look up ratio, but a ratio of what? So it's remaining time. So I had to do a little bit of hunting around to different keywords to find what it was that I was after. So I found them okay. Okay, so I'm going to click on compile and save. Always want to compile and save your graph stuff, and make sure you save your work before you get out of an editor. Okay, so now that we've got this our state machine set up, we're going to get into the event graph, and I'm going to just toggle that code off there. So this is going to update the animation. So what we need to do is let's get try get pawn owner, add that here, and executed when the animation is updated. So we're going to come out here and we're going to get is valid node. Okay, so if it's valid, then we'll continue on, and the input object is try get pawn owner. Okay, the pawn is just a playable character here. Okay, so we also need to check to see if the character is in the air. So if that's valid, let's type is, and here's this variable that we already created. So let's say set is in air. All right. So now we're going to drag out and we're going to look for our speed variable. And so then we'll set the speed. Okay, so we need to find out whether or not the character is in air, and get the velocity. Okay, so let's drag off again off of this try get pawn owner, and let's say get movement component, and let's drag off again. And so again, Unreal has a built-in navigation component of is falling, and so if it is falling, then we can click this up here and tell it under set, yes, it is in the air. And we still need to get speed here, so let's click off and get pawn owner again. And for here, let's say get velocity, and speed is measured in a vector length, so let's go for vector length, and then we'll take this and select it up and connect it up there. Okay, so that's our event graph that drives the state machine, or it allows the state machine to work. Okay, so let's click on compile, and let's click on save. And you know, there used to be a section where you could come in and you could actually mess with these variables. I don't see it now. Is it the preview editor? Yes, here it is in the preview editor. So we can adjust the speed up, and so we can tell that everything's working. All right. We can also click to see if it's in the air, and so then it's going to idle. If it's not in the air, then it'll come back. So that's kind of a good way to preview what you've got going on. Right, so save and save. So that's it for the animation blueprint.